It's interesting with stuff like Massive or Massive X, where they don't try to specifically model an already existing instrument, but to do something completely new and different. And it would be interesting to have that kind of whatever magical engine you're using for your modeling of the real world instruments. If you apply that to something really crazy, something that doesn't exist but has the same feel of realism, and like it feels like you can actually touch the physical instrument, even though it's only exists on your computer. That would be fascinating.
In collaboration with Zoom, the makers of the Q2N 4K camera.
Hi Peter, welcome to MIDI Talk. I'm glad to have you here. MIDI Talk is a video podcast created by Audio Modeling to be in touch and connect with different artists all around the world. And we want to get secrets, insights from you, from your career stories, and also understand the relationship that music and technology had in your career, for example. So thank you for joining, for your time. I would like also to thank our sponsor, Zoom, that is providing the cameras, the Q2N 4K, that are great for musicians. So, Peter, could you tell us about your love affair with the disco and house music? So,
well, I'll start with my love affair with music, because I didn't start off with disco or house music. I was very influenced by, I guess, the sounds in my home when I was growing up. I grew up in a quite musical family. My dad was a musician. He would be touring and then bring home records, and there were instruments in the house. And so, yeah, it was like a very musical environment. I mean, he bought a lot of records, vinyl, back in the day. And I started to slowly explore his music collection. I listened to the records, and for some reason, very early on, I was drawn to electronic sounds, like synthesizers and like otherworldly sounds. And the stuff that my dad was into, he was heavily into jazz and jazz fusion, jazz funk. And a lot of that music around late 70s, early 80s had a lot of synthesizers, a lot of high-tech stuff. And I was drawn to that. I was drawn to the sound. And then slowly I started to appreciate the richness of the music as well, with the harmonies and melodies of jazz and everything. And then later on, I started to get into the more funk and soul side of things. He was into Earth, Wind & Fire as well, so I would listen to Earth, Wind & Fire, and I was obviously more towards the soul and disco side of things. And then, yeah, I kind of took off from there. It's always been an element of soul, funk, and jazz in everything, most things I like. I always had this, since I was into sound, electronic sounds and all that. So I really liked the sound of club music, but I wasn't necessarily into the actual music. But I liked the beats and all that. And then when I realized that, you can combine jazz and house music, you can have jazzy house music. So that's kind of when that clicked for me. I think it was like Masters at Work in the mid 90s or something like that, when I kind of, actually I went to London one time, sometime early 90s, I think. I went to this place, Bar Rumba. I was supposed to give the DJ there a demo tape. A friend who knew this guy said, you have to go there and give this guy a demo tape. And he was playing at this club, Bar Rumba. And I think that was the first time I experienced jazzy club music. I got down to this club and was just pounding like massive grooves and beats, but had like jazzy solos on top. And I was just, wow, this is amazing. Like, it was just the thing I was into, all those things combined, all the right elements. So that's I think when I started to get into club music, house music, but from coming from a jazz angle.
It's really interesting because I can tell also in our job of development and designing digital products, I really like when I can combine influences from other contexts. So sometimes I bring ideas from the web or other products that can change really the perspective of something that you could not imagine before. So I think that also music works in the same way. When you find the right balance, or you can cross different styles together.
And that's what's so interesting with club music, because as much as I love jazz, I love harmonies, I love, I'm not a trained musician at all, but I appreciate the rules that are there, and the ways to make things sound musical and all that. What's fascinating with club music is a lot of people, the pioneers, they didn't necessarily knew about music theory. They were just messing around with these machines and getting amazing sounds out of them. That was, it wasn't the intended purpose to use the machine a certain way, like the Roland 303 bass line. I remember my dad brought one home to try it out, and it was rubbish because it didn't sound like a real electric bass. So he thought nothing of that machine, whereas somebody else in Detroit picks it up, or Chicago, and creates this whole totally new sound that nobody thought about before, because they approach it from a completely different angle. So I love that element of club music where you just experiment and you come up with all these weird new concepts and ways of doing things that you don't find in classical jazz or classical music, where everything is kind of strict and things sound the same for 30 years. But whereas in the club world, things move at a different pace and in a different way.
Yeah, cool. It's really fascinating. But did you had also a kind of classical or regular music training or study, or did you experiment by yourself and find your way across the different tools and machines and software that came out during the years?
I was probably not talented and patient enough to actually learn to read and write music. I tried to take lessons from my dad because he's a trained musician. And well, first of all, it's not a good idea to take lessons from your dad. Just didn't quite work out. And also I was always messing around, playing my own little melodies and doing my own little riffs on the piano. And I wasn't really interested in playing somebody else's written music because it was just boring to me. And I was messing around with sound as well. I remember one of my first musical memories when I was maybe 3 years old. My dad had an acoustic guitar, and I would bend the strings with pliers and stuff, and just to get a different sound out of the strings, do all these weird things. And used to have a piano where I would tape the strings with duct tape or something to get a different sound. I put the tic tacs into the hammers of the piano. My mom loved that probably, just to get the spiked piano sound. So I was always into the sound engineering aspect of it, I guess. But of course, I wanted to be able to play as well. But I just, I learned by myself and built my own little musical universe. But now, in retrospect, I wish I would have learned to write and read music, because that would be amazing to have that ability as well. But it is what it is.
Yeah, correct. No, it's really really fascinating. I would like to ask you if you can tell the story behind your remix of 1960 Watts by Gregory Porter, especially how you made that, and why do you think it was so successful?
That was one of those things where I DJ a lot, or back then I DJed even more. I used to play a few spots around town here in Stockholm. That was the original 1960 was from Gregory Porter's first album, and he was well, nobody knew about him back then. And I had this album, and there was this one track, 1960 Watt, which I was playing out in my sets. And every time I played, I felt like this would work well in a clubby setting as well, if you had a bit of a kick to it and tighten it up a bit. And then one day I just thought, okay, I'll just try it out. And I loaded up and just basically did an edit. I tightened up the track. I warped it in Ableton, so the track becomes like quantized. So as a DJ, you can mix it with other music. I put some percussion, kick drum. I played a new bass line, just played it from start to finish, one take basically. And it was like really quick. But I liked it. It sounded okay. I thought, okay, this will work. And I just put it up on the SoundCloud for people to listen, not to download, but just, so people could hear it. And immediately I started getting messages in my inbox. Oh, what is this? Can I have it? Blah, blah. And I thought, okay, something's going on here. And obviously, I mean, the success of that track is the original, because it's a very powerful song, the lyrics and Gregory Porter's voice and everything. So I just kind of gave it a little notch onto the dance floor. But a lot of people discovered the track through this edit. And then, like the day after I put it up on SoundCloud, I got an email from Gregory Porter's record label, Motima, the label he was with at the time. And the subject said something like, regarding your Gregory Porter remix. I thought, oh shit, okay, I have to take it down. And they're all pissed and everything. But they were super cool. So they were just really thankful and happy that I did this edit, and they wondered if they could use it. And I said, yeah, sure. And then after a while, they actually licensed it from me, like bought as an official remix. And then it just kind of took off because, yeah, like I said, it's a really powerful song, and the lyrics resonate with a lot of the racial stuff that's been going on, was still going on in the US. So it's a powerful song that made its way onto a lot of different places and definitely on the dance floor. So yeah, it was a interesting remix, as it was like not really was something I just did out of the love of the music. I didn't think too much about it. And, you can spend like 3 weeks on another remix and nothing will happen. And this one took, I don't know, like 2 hours and it was done. And then it kind of takes off. So you never know. But like I said, the original is very powerful. So that's obviously one of the main reasons it really took off.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that a remix can bring a new life, a new perspective to an original song. And what would you suggest to maybe to younger people that are approaching remixes? So what could be the first step to go? What they should do? For sure, I think. Choose the right song. But can you tell them more, maybe?
There's a problem, I guess. Well, I don't guess. It is a problem in many ways that there's so many accessible tools these days. It's so easy to make something that sounds like music. Like you can load things up in Ableton. You can make things, tighten it up, make it quantized. You bring in a kick drum and then you put some samples on top of it and then you have a track. And that's very fun to do. And it's great. I think, like, if you're young and you're interested, just go for it. But I would love for people to actually train themselves musically as well. Like, look into chords, because there's so much stuff out there that, people just throw stuff together. You take a drum beat from here, some chords there, and then a vocal there. And like, they're in different keys and it's all way off, and it has kind of the sound of a produced track, but the musical elements are like all over the place. So there's a lot of bad music out there, which, I mean, that's just the way it is, because the tools are so accessible now, and that's for good and for bad. I mean, it's great that, I mean, everybody can have a $2 million studio in the laptop these days, and that's absolutely amazing. But with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, first, just if you're interested in you have a spark, just go for it and have fun, because there's such a great feeling to make something that sounds like music, and whether it's good or not, that doesn't really matter. When you start off, just have fun. And then if you really like feel you have something going and you're interested, then you can start learning more and explore other areas. But just go for it. And if you're lucky, you pick a song that might be good for editing or remixing, and it might take off, and then but then you have to be able to follow that up. So that's the tricky part, but yeah.
I see. No, it's really interesting. Sometimes it's difficult to define the recipe of making a good music. I think also because it's a journey for everyone, maybe to discover, to try, manipulate, to deal with technology, and then see the results. I have another question here. I have seen that you made many collaboration. So you mentioned that you worked with also important labels, but also with great artists. So how did you work with Omar, Lisa Stansfield? Did you meet them or not? What is the workflow in this case?
Unfortunately, these days, I don't see anybody. I'm just, well, especially now, it's during the pandemic, you don't see anybody. But no, in the cases you mentioned, like Omar and Lisa Stansfield, those are remix projects. And when it comes to remix, I get approached by usually the labels, sometimes by the artist directly, and they ask me if I want to do a remix. And then I just get the file sent to me over the internet, obviously. So you very rarely, I mean, sometimes when I go and have a gig somewhere, I might meet the artist that I remixed, and that's always great. But very rarely, I don't meet the people I remix or the people I collaborate with, because we're doing everything through the internet now. For me, that I like it because it's an easy way of working. Because there's no messing around with setting up your studio, recording, doing 500 takes, and then comping that and picking out the best parts and then redo and all that. They send me the files and that's it. That's what I have to work with, and that's my frame, my reference, and I'll make something out of that. But then if you're doing like original stuff, recording original songs, and you have a vocalist, then obviously many times you want to be there. You want to be there when the vocalist records, and you want to work on stuff together and get that organic exchange and flow of ideas and come up with something in a collaborative way. Even there, when I've done original releases where people have recorded vocals specifically for my original tracks, then I've done that through internet as well. And then you might go back and forth and you say, I like this part, maybe you could add some more ad libs, or you can do. So it works, but I know a lot of people who hate it because they want to be there hands-on in the studio. For me, it works. I like it this way.
Yeah, I can tell that in every field it starts to become usual. I would say that I have worked with people in Japan designing apps and software with many people all around the world, and I would say that it's a huge possibility, because otherwise we will be restricted to work only with the people that we can only meet, or we can be in touch and be on the same room. Yes, of course, it could be a double-edged sword, but I think that the pros are much more than the cons in that case.
Yeah, I agree, because I mean, obviously with a lot of this online stuff and everything, there's no human interaction, there's no like physical contact, and you don't see people in their eyes and pick up cues and all that, and it's like sterile. And if you add it all up, I think the positives outweigh the negatives, because it just gives you so much more opportunity. And also just the possibility to connect not with just collaborators, but fans around the world, people that are into what you're doing, and you get to hear from people in like all over the world, which is amazing. Like back in the day when I was sending out demos, and you had to buy, I don't know, 30 cassette tapes and then postage and all that, and you sent it away, and then maybe 3 months later you got I just actually the other day I got an ex-girlfriend who found a box of photos and stuff we thought were lost, and she gave them back to me, and one of the things in this box was a postcard from a record label that I apparently sent a demo to. I don't remember, but it was like in the early 90s, and it just said tape received on the postcard, and that's the only thing I ever heard from them. But it's so different today. You just upload something and email, and in 2 seconds you have reached somebody, and you can get, if you're lucky, you get some feedback, and it's just the possibilities are completely different now.
Yeah. I imagine to give tapes also maybe in person to somebody and try to listen, please. yeah, it's totally different.
But also the flip side of it is that everybody can reach out and everybody can get their stuff out. So it's so saturated. There's so much things like it's like information overflow. It's really hard to cut through. So if you're starting out and you want to get played and get heard, it's tricky. It's tough to get through all the noise.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Also, if you think about now the possibility, the access to the music we have, we can open our phone and have access to quite unlimited amount of music. When I was young, I could only take a look in the leaflet of the of the disc. So it is totally different. So it was more difficult in the past, but I can tell that now it's also more difficult to go deeper sometimes, because when I open a record and I could see the musician that were playing on it, now this information is quite totally hidden somewhere. So on Spotify, on different services, it's difficult to know the musician and the people that worked behind that record.
Yeah, that's very true. I was actually thinking that the other day, because I haven't been using Spotify that much, but just recently actually signed up for a subscription. And it's amazing. Everything is there, but it's quite overwhelming because you have access to so much. But one of the things that really bugs me, like there's no information. Like when you were back in the day, you could read the sleeve notes and you got to see who produced it, who played and all that. And it would be so easy to have that information available as well. But there's no info anywhere. That's really missing. Like sometimes there's so many people involved in an album or even one song, and it would be nice to research that or just to get that information, but it's really hard.
Let's go back a little bit on gears and technology. You mentioned that you are using Ableton Live.
Yeah, I used to use it way more. Mm-hmm. I used Ableton for performing live because, and I used to do edits in Ableton Live, but all my production work, like official remixes and productions, I do in Cubase. Nowadays, I even do my edits in Cubase. So I rarely use Ableton these days. It's mostly all Cubase, actually.
And what are your favorite instruments? Are you using more hardware or are you using more software, or both of them? What is your general setup?
Yeah, well, these days I'm all software. Everything's in the box. Mm-hmm. I used to have a lot of hardware, but from the first time I tried out environment on the computer, I think it was Propeller Hertz software called Rebirth, which was I think 808 drums and a TR-303 bassline emulation. And you could create your songs and everything in the software on the computer. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. Like, what if one day you could have like your whole production in the computer? Like, would that be possible? So I've always been fascinated by that idea. And then gradually things developed and plugins started to sound better and better. And obviously the computers got more and more powerful. So after a while, I just totally gave up on the hardware side of things. Not because of of the sound, but just because of out of convenience. And for me, it was inspiring because I had this like an environment in a computer where I could control everything, and I can work on many projects in parallel. And every time you bring a project up, everything is there the way you left it. You don't have to worry about mixer settings and EQs and all that, the hardware stuff. So for me, it's just a great tool to achieve what I want, which is good sounding music. And I don't care too much about the actual tools. I don't need to have the actual hardware to get inspired. I can get inspired by what's in the computer. So I don't use much hardware. But then again, it's a different feeling though with the hands-on stuff when you turn knobs and something happens and you playing on pads or a real keyboard and whatnot. So that's fun as well. But for me, to get the work done, I usually just do everything on the computer.
Mm-hmm. What are your favorite instruments, software instruments that you are running on your production? Do you have something that is always there, or you change depending on the project?
When it comes to drums, quite a few years ago now, I did some videos and demos for Excellent Audio, the Swedish company that they do drum plugins and they do pianos and keyboards as well. But their drums are called Addictive Drums. It's really great because they have the whole kit is multi-samples, and you have like round robin variations on the samples, so you can get kind of an organic live sound out of it. So I end up using that on pretty much everything for drums. And then I use Contact's battery as well for more like straight up electronic, like one-shot sample sounds. I use something called Kick by Sonic Academy, I think, which is great, which is a soft synth that does kick sounds. It's not sample based.
I see.
So it does like analog kind of 909 style of kicks. So you can get all kinds of kicks, but it's great for dialing in that bottom end and get it like really tight and hit the right frequencies. And I usually combine it with I'll use this kick synthetic drums software for the bottom end, and then I'll put maybe a sample kick on top to get the combination of the two. And then I don't know, I use Rhodes sounds a lot, and I've been using Scarby's EP88, I think it's called, the largest Rhodes sample library made by Scarby, which is really great. It's got, I can get all kinds of all the Rhodes sounds I need out of that one. So I use that one a lot. And then when it comes to synth sounds, I use a lot of the Arturia stuff lately. I also used to use a lot of F Expansion, had something called DCAM Synth Squad, which was also like a analog emulation style of soft synths. And I like them because there's a lot of, I like soft synths with a lot of modulation possibilities. That's one of the things I love doing in the computer as well, because you can modulate things all over the place. And soft synths that have those kind of capabilities, I really like that. So yeah, the Arturia stuff I use a lot, and F Expansion. There's a great Oberheim emulation called OPX. I use that quite a lot as well. I try to stick to a few and try to learn them well, instead of just buying everything that's new out there just to have the latest and greatest. But also Massive X, I use that one. I really like that one because you have it has its own unique sound, and you have so much control over the really fine details of the sound in there. So
it's really interesting when you were talking about modulation and to control in real time the sounds. Also here at Audio Modeling, we are dealing with this kind of possibilities. So with our models, we make instruments that can be controlled in real time. So the physical and behavioral models try to give you the same control on acoustic virtual instruments. So it's also our vision to deliver more and more modulation possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I know your software and I've tried it out and everything, and it's just amazing. And I've seen a lot of videos with really great performances with the Rolly controllers as well, where you have like all these extra parameters that you can use to control the sound and make it sound really like a live instrument. That's amazing. And for me also, I mean, since I'm not a very skilled live player, I like to have access to all these parameters and make it sound like real live and organic. But you can do it, even if you can't play well live, you can program it to make it sound as if it was played live. So those things are quite important.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite controller, or is just a keyboard controller? What do you use?
I use a contact control. I don't think I use it in the way it's meant to be. It's not integrated with the contact instruments. I just use it because I like the action of the keyboard. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't do a lot of modulation live while I'm playing. I'll do it after when I recorded something, and then I'll go in and tweak stuff. So it's the controller itself. For me, the most important aspect is how the keyboard feels, like the playability of it. And since I'm not super trained or anything, so I need it to be a certain way for me to feel comfortable. And this one has quite good action, so I like that one.
The last question for you regarding the technology and your relationship with instruments and gears. What would you like to see in the near future? If you could ask to instruments, software, hardware instruments manufacturers to build something new, to provide a new feature, what is your biggest need right now? Do you have any frustration or something that we can make for you?
Yeah, I'll write your wish list. No, I mean, there's always frustrations in every single software. Like, I love this software, but if it could only do this, or only if I could do that, or so it's hard to say anything in general. I mean, I have to say this is not a plug or anything, but it's just my honest opinion. Before I tried out your software, I wasn't aware how far this modeling has come. Like the realism of the instrument is just amazing. I was playing around with the trumpet the other day, and it just blew my mind how real it sounds and how alive it sounds. And obviously then you go, okay, well, if they can do that with trumpets and strings, how about a upright bass or piano? You know, just want to hear everything modeled with the same like quality that you have for the stuff you already have there. So I'm looking forward to what more you guys come up with in that area, because it's really getting there. But then again, you could imagine, I guess that's same for a lot of other software as well. You emulate something that already exists, like all these plugins that try to emulate the Minimoog or Prophet 5, whatever. It's interesting with stuff like Massive or Massive X, where they don't try to specifically model an already existing instrument, but to do something completely new and different. And it would be interesting to have that kind of whatever magical engine you're using for your modeling of the real world instruments. If you apply that to something really crazy, something that doesn't exist but has the same feel of realism, and like it feels like you can actually touch the physical instrument, even though it's only exists on your computer. That would be fascinating.
That's really interesting also because what you are saying, we had a discussion last year with Roger Lynn talking about more or less the same thing, because he was wondering if we could build something that goes outside the boundaries of the emulation of the acoustic instrument and somehow blend or connect different modules together to bring alive something that does not exist. We actually, I can tell that we have the possibility to work in the future of something that does not only the emulation, but can give also new possibility, new angles. We just put a small clue on the new brass, because on the brass there's the possibility also to choose between the valves and the slide in any instrument, so you can have a trumpet with a slide. So there is a small license that we have extended a bit the models to provide more possibilities, but there will be absolutely an interesting path to build a new model that can have, for example, the sound of a trumpet with the evolution of a bowed strings. So it could be really interesting.
It's interesting, this thing of like the possibilities in creativity and all that, where sometimes the limitations are what makes you creative and what gets inspiring. Like, this is all you can do with this machine or this box, and you have to figure out a way to do something interesting with it. If you have too many possibilities, the sky's the limit, then you just sit there and like, well, everything's possible. So where do you start? Where do you go? So it's an interesting balance. I see the logic behind some companies not wanting to, they make an emulation of say the Prophet 5, but they won't implement anything new like modulation capabilities or anything that was outside the possibilities of the original machine, because in many cases the limitations of that instrument or that machine made it what it was and made you create those specific sounds. It's an interesting duality in a sense. Like, do you make something that you can do everything, or do you make something that has a few parameters and that's it, and then it's up to you to be creative within that space?
This is a really good point. I can tell that when I speak to our sound designer and CEO Stefano, he said that he learned a lot during the 80s when the possibility of the instruments were limited, but you can get a great sound from a Roland D50, but it was limited in the power. But he had the chance to learn deeply about sound design with those kind of machine. Now that you have a huge power and a huge amount of possibility, is difficult to find and to learn. So it's really tough to say. I agree with you. I like also make parallels because I am a software designer. And what I'm doing when I'm designing a very deep software, what I'm trying to do is to create a first level that is the most accessible, with few parameters, few options that can have a macro access to get easily into the product, into the instrument. There should be a gradual level of making more stuff. So the idea is that you should provide everything, but at different levels of experience, skills, and needs. The trick is to find the right balance. And usually the human brain has a couple of options to choose. If you have 3 or 4 options, it's good to deal with that. If you have 20 or 50, it's difficult.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes total sense. And also I don't know if anybody does that, but I can imagine where you would have, maybe when you're doing emulations, like you have a kind of restricted classic mode or whatever, then you can unlock, like you can decide that, okay, give me everything, and then you can get into under the hood and you can modulate and you can connect everything and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But I guess that's makes it harder for you guys to come up with an interface and program that stuff. I don't envy you, but
yeah, but it's fun. It's really a nice journey. I'm happy about that. Yeah,
I can imagine it must be very satisfying.
So I would like if you can tell, how do you deal with the music business? How do you sell your music, and how can you manage this? If you have some suggestion, if you can tell your story, how did it work for you?
Yeah, well, the sad truth is that there's not much money to go around in this business, depending on what you're doing, obviously. But when when I started out making music and producing music, sometime when I would actually make some money from it was in, I don't know, mid 90s. But I always had a day job at the same time. And then the music started to take off. I was doing production work for a lot of major labels through this management company that I was working with. And this was like late 90s, early 2000, when there was quite a lot of money going around, and you can get good fees for remixing and stuff and doing production work. And then everybody was telling me, oh, you have to give up your day job, like go music full time. And I was always kind of, I don't know, but will I make it or not? And then the company I was working for, I was working in IT. I was the art director for this web agency, and this is the late 90s, early 2000, when the IT bubble burst, and all of a sudden we were all laid off, and I got a nice severance pay. So I thought, okay, fuck it, I'm going to do music now, to give it a go full time, see what happens. And that was the same time when the music industry kind of went to shits as well. All of a sudden, like those projects and nice, well-paid jobs I used to have before, they were kind of gone as well. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a few years. I have some money saved up, and I'll just do my own thing and see what happens. Did my own productions, and I would do, remixes just to post them up on different. Back then there was no Facebook or anything, but there was like message boards or forums where you could post music and people would comment and share and all that. And I would be on all these music forums and post my stuff up and see what happens. And then slowly people started to take notice, and I would get official remix requests, and then it just very slowly, gradually started building. And for me, I wasn't chasing anything. I just thought, like, the well-paid corporate stuff is gone, so I might as well just do my own thing instead of trying to chase the latest sound or trying to be commercial or whatever. So I just stuck to my own thing, tried to set the bar as high as I could for myself musically, and just kept on doing it. And then gradually things started working out, and then now I'm fortunate because that's how I make my living. I'm doing a lot of remixes. I do production work, and I used to do, not now, but DJ a lot. So that in combination, especially if you're in dance music, everybody pretty much expects you to be DJ as well, and that's also where you get a lot of your income is from DJ gigs. Your music promotes your DJ gigs, and your DJ gigs promote your music. Kind of, it's like a nice feedback loop there. Yeah. So somehow it just worked out. And also for me, since I don't have a family, I don't have kids, so I don't have a lot of overhead costs. So that means it's easier to tough it out because it's very up and down. So you never know when the next paycheck is coming. But if I'm only have myself to worry about, then it's fine. I know there's a lot of producers out there, they have families and everything. And I just don't. How do you do it? Like, how do you find time, and how do you get through the stress of the payments that you don't know when and if they're coming? But for me, in that sense, it's easier. But I've been fortunate, so I'm doing okay.
Yeah, but I think that you have been fortunate, but also you had a plan, a perseverance, and you tried to make what you wanted. So I think you were sure about that decision.
I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, and I also knew that I was going to give myself time to do it. I think that's important, especially if you're pushing your own thing. It takes time.
Yeah.
And especially if you're not doing like anything commercial, something that's a bit left of center. If you keep doing it with a certain consistency and quality, then eventually people will take notice. But I think you need stamina, and you need a bit of a loony, I guess, because sometimes you wonder why you're doing things because nothing's happening. Then all of a sudden things start to roll, and then start kind of snowballing, and then all of a sudden you're doing it and it works out. And it's an amazing feeling to actually feel like you're not working and still make a living somehow. I mean, I'm doing exactly the thing I want to do. I can't imagine doing anything more fun than this. Well, I'd love to be an astronaut, but that's not really happening. So I'll stick to music, and when that works out, it's amazing.
Peter, I'm so happy to add this chat with you. I am fortunate because I'm telling to every guest because I am fortunate because I can meet artists, people from all around the world, learn insights from them. So I am totally like it's a really great to understand better the artists, their life, their careers, their needs, because I think that we can share this with our followers, that it could be an inspiration for them and could be also an inspiration for us to build better products and have good ideas. Thank you really for your time and joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you. It's been great.